The galaxy had waited for this war for a long time. 100 years had passed since the day the Council of Alien Species decided humanity must be destroyed. They feared the strange rise of Earth, the way humans grew stronger even after every disaster, the way they kept fighting even when outnumbered. The alien leaders believed they had only one chance to stop this unpredictable species, and that was to train for a war that would erase humans before they could spread too far. So they began to prepare century-long training, fleets of warships, endless drills where soldiers were told stories of human weakness. The humans, they said, were chaotic, emotional, and soft. Their world was divided into nations always fighting each other. Their weapons were primitive compared to the galactic powers. The soldiers laughed at the idea of facing Earth. For them, this war would not be a challenge, but a test of patience after such a long wait. Generations of warriors grew up under this story. Sons and daughters were born into the idea that they would be the heroes who crushed humanity. Entire planets turned into training grounds. Every battle simulation was against humans. The alien generals made the humans look clumsy, unorganized, always on the edge of panic. Soldiers believed the war would be simple. The humans would scream and surrender once the first shots were fired. Confidence turned into arrogance, and arrogance turned into certainty. After 100 years, the great fleets were ready. Armies of millions stood ready to move. The time of waiting had ended when the order was finally given. It felt like history was moving. Across the stars, the massive ships gathered. Countless engines lit the black space, burning brighter than suns. 100 alien races united under one banner, bound by the same fear and the same hatred. They called themselves the End War Armada. For them, this was not just war, it was destiny. They were the saviors of the galaxy, the shield that would stop humans from ever reaching beyond their system. The soldiers sang war songs as they traveled. Their commanders promised glory, and he believed Earth would fall in hours. Some even joked that it would take longer to land on Earth than to crush its army. As the fleet approached the edge of the solar system, scouts were sent forward. Reports came back strange. No sign of human defense fleets. No hidden traps. Just silence. The scouts were confused. They had expected to see desperate human warships gathering at the edge of space, ready to protect their home. But there was nothing. The aliens did not worry. They laughed at the thought that humans might already be scared, hiding inside their planet like children hiding under a blanket. The commanders took the silence as proof of human weakness. Fear was the first step to defeat. The Armada moved closer. Mars was passed without resistance. The alien soldiers were excited now, sure that victory was already theirs. But among the leaders, there was a small unease. It was too quiet. No messages from Earth, no threats, no demands, no surrender either. For a species that loved to talk, to argue, to shout their opinions across the stars, this silence was unnatural. Still, the commanders silenced their doubts. They told themselves humans were broken inside before the war even began. The long wait would finally be over, and it would end with fire. The closer they came, the more the soldiers dreamed of what would follow. Earth would be burned. The humans would beg for mercy. Their leaders would be dragged before the council. In chains, their technology would be seized. Their children would be forced into servitude. The galaxy would cheer the victory. The songs of triumph would echo across 100 worlds. They had trained for a century, and this was the reward. In their minds, they had already won. The war was only a formality, a necessary step to claim the prize of history. But somewhere deep in the silence of Earth's skies, something else was waiting. Unknown signals were watching the alien fleet. Hidden eyes followed every movement. In secret stations across the solar system, humans were calm, not panicked. They were not praying for safety. They were not calling for help. They were simply waiting. The silence was not fear. The silence was preparation. No alien knew this truth yet, but soon they would. The humans had also been watching, and they had been waiting too. Not for 100 years, but long enough. Long enough to know exactly how their enemy thought. Long enough to make their own plans. Long enough to make sure the war would not last. Hours, or days, or years. It would last minutes. The Armada reached Earth's orbit. Hundreds of massive ships blocked the sunlight. Alien soldiers cheered inside their carriers. Weapons charged. Generals stood tall, proud, ready to order the first strike. They believed the waiting was over. They believed victory was already written. But on the surface of Earth, the cities were calm. The people went on with their lives as if nothing was happening. No chaos, no panic, no fear. To the aliens, this silence still felt strange, like a shadow that stretched too far. And then, in that quiet moment before the first shot, before history turned into fire, there was a thought whispered only among the bravest of alien commanders, a thought they did not dare speak aloud. What if they had been the ones trapped in the long wait? What if humanity was not the prey at all, but the hunter waiting for the right moment to strike? This thought came too late. The silence was about to end. And when it did, the galaxy would remember the moment forever. The alien fleet hung over Earth like a wall of steel and fire. Thousands of ships floated in formation, their weapons charged, ready to strike at the planet below. To the alien soldiers inside, this was the final stage of their 100-year mission. They were certain the humans would soon panic. Some expected to hear desperate pleas for peace. Others imagined screams and chaos from the surface. But the silence continued. Not a single radio wave, not a single surrender message, not even a warning. The humans were quiet, far too quiet. The commanders laughed, convincing themselves it was fear. They believed the humans had already broken. But deep inside, a few began to feel uneasy. This silence did not sound like fear. It sounded like something else. The order came. The fleet began to move closer. Weapons locked on cities, military bases, and communication hubs. The alien generals prepared to fire the first volley, the strike that would erase humanity's pride in an instant. Countless soldiers watched from the windows of their carriers. Waiting to see fire rain upon Earth, they dreamed of glory songs of cheers when they returned home with victory. But just as the command was about to be given, something strange happened. One of the forward destroyers vanished. Not exploded, not damaged, simply vanished. Its signal disappeared from the fleet's systems as if it had never existed. Confusion spread. Commanders shouted. Technicians scrambled to scan the area. There were no signs of weapons fire, no energy spikes, nothing at all. One moment the ship was there. The next it was gone before the generals could react. Another ship vanished, then another. Panic rippled through the fleet. Soldiers rushed to battle stations, searching the black space around them, but the sensors showed nothing. No enemy ships, no hidden weapons, no mines, just silence. The commanders tried to calm their forces, telling them it must be some malfunction, some technical failure, but everyone could see the truth. Something was hunting them, and they could not even see it. The panic grew worse when one of the larger carriers holding thousands of troops erupted in flames. This time there was no doubt they had been hit. But the attack had no visible source. The alien fleet opened fire blindly into the void, spraying energy bolts in every direction. Darkness of space lit up like a storm. But their weapons struck nothing. It was as if they were shooting at ghosts. The soldiers who had trained for 100 years suddenly felt helpless, like children holding sticks against an invisible predator on Earth's surface. Hidden bunkers deep underground came alive. Human commanders watched every move of the alien fleet through networks of cloaked satellites. They did not speak loudly, they did not cheer, they did not celebrate. They simply gave orders in calm voices. The world above continued in silence. Civilians lived as if no war was hanging over their heads. It was not fear, it was confidence. Humanity had planned for this moment for decades, building weapons in secret, hidden far beyond the reach of alien spies. And now those weapons were finally unleashed. The invisible attacks came from stealth platforms, silent killers drifting among the stars. To alien eyes, they did not exist. To human systems, they were precise and unstoppable. One by one, the alien warships fell, their destruction, spreading confusion through the armada. The commanders demanded answers. Where were the human fleets? Where were the defenders? Why did no ships rise from Earth to meet them? But the truth was worse than anything they had imagined. Humanity did not need fleets in the open. The whole solar system was their weapon, and the aliens had already walked into its heartmine, its past. And already hundreds of ships were gone. Some vanished without a trace. Others broke apart with violent bursts of light. The alien soldiers stopped. Laughing, their arrogance began to crack. Some begged their leaders to retreat, but retreat was impossible. Their pride would not allow it. And even if it did, the humans would never let them leave so easily. The aliens realized too late that they were not the hunters. They were the prey trapped inside a silent cage. The commanders tried to reorganize. They pulled the fleet tighter, forming defensive walls, ships protecting each other. They thought this would slow the attacks. But the invisible strikes continued, slipping through every defense as if walls meant nothing. Ships in the center of the formation vanished the same way as those on the edge. It was like watching shadows devour the armada piece by piece. The soldiers felt madness growing inside them. They had been trained for open war, for shouting and charging into battle. It's not for this silent killing that came without warning. Could not see the enemy, and worse, they could not even hear them back on Earth. The human commanders exchanged quiet glances. They had promised the world they would keep this war short. They had promised that humanity would never again be underestimated, and they would keep that promise. Already they had tested their weapons enough. Already they had shown the aliens that no amount of training could prepare them for humanity's response. The next phase would begin soon, and when it did, the war would not last much longer above the planet. The alien soldiers watched in terror as more of their fleet vanished. Some screamed at the darkness, others fell silent, unable to believe what was happening. They had trained for 100 years, but not for this. Their leaders tried to speak of courage, but their voices shook with fear. Silence of humanity pressed on them like a weight, heavier than any weapon. The war they thought would be easy was slipping from their hands before it even began, and yet none of them knew the truth. What they had seen was only the beginning. Humanity had not yet struck with its full power. When it did, the galaxy would change forever. The alien fleet was breaking apart, and no one understood how. In the command ships, generals screamed at their officers to find the enemy, but the scanners showed only darkness. The humans were nowhere, yet their strikes were everywhere. Some alien soldiers believed the humans had unlocked forbidden technology. Others whispered about demons hiding in space. None of them wanted to admit the truth that all their training, all their 100 years of preparation had prepared them for the wrong war. It expected armies and fleets they could see. Instead, they were fighting shadows inside one of the largest carriers. A young alien soldier clutched his weapon as alarms blared. He had grown up hearing stories of human weakness. His father told him humans feared death, that they would surrender the moment war began. Now, as the ship shook under another silent strike, the young soldier realized his father had been wrong. The humans were not afraid of death. They were the ones dealing it out faster than anyone could understand. His commanders shouted orders, but no one listened. Panic had taken hold. The sound of fear was louder than any weapon. Ships continued to vanish in bursts of light or simply blinked out of existence. The fleet tried to fire back, but their weapons struck only emptiness. The invisible attackers moved too fast, too silently. A destroyer fired every missile it carried in a desperate attempt to hit something. Not a single one connected. Moments later, the destroyer itself was gone, erased in a blinding flash. The alien soldiers began to realize something terrifying. They had trained against an enemy that never existed. Every simulation, every practice battle, every story of human weakness, it had all been a lie. Humanity was not weak. Humanity had been waiting, watching, preparing its own weapon on Earth. Hidden under the oceans, beneath the crust, and far in the darkness of orbit, the real war machines were awake. For decades, humanity had built them in secret, hidden from alien spies who thought they understood Earth. These machines were not fleets in the open sky. They were cloaked hunters, invisible to alien sensors, powered by technology the galaxy had never seen before. They fired weapons that did not glow, did not make sound, weapons that tore apart ships without warning. Humanity had never wanted. this war, but they had planned for it. The aliens thought Earth was slow, divided, and weak. But in their arrogance, they had missed the truth. When humanity felt threatened, it built weapons not for battle, but for extinction. One alien commander tried to rally his forces. He ordered them to spread out, to move away from Earth and regroup. It was a desperate plan, but it was too late. As soon as his command ship began to turn, it was destroyed in an instant. The explosion was so bright that it blinded every nearby vessel. The rest of the fleet froze, terrified. If even the commander's ship, the most heavily defended of them all, could be destroyed in one strike, then no ship was safe. The alien soldiers finally understood the horror. There was no safe place, no stronghold, no defense. Humanity could strike anyone, anywhere. Without warning, panic spread faster than fire. Some ships tried to retreat, but invisible hunters followed them. Some tried to shield themselves behind others, but the weapons cut through everything. The galaxy's proudest warriors, who had trained for generations, were screaming like frightened children. Their songs of glory were replaced by desperate prayers. They begged their leaders to save them, but their leaders had no answers. For the first time in 100 years, the aliens felt powerless. The prey they thought would be easy had become the predator, and the predator was merciless on Earth's surface. The people still carried on with their daily lives. The cities were calm, the streets quiet. Ordinary humans went to work. Families sat in their homes. Children played. To them, the war above was distant, already decided. They trusted their defenders because humanity had learned the hard way. Across history, that survival meant unity when the threat was real. In secret, the human military monitored everything, and when they saw the alien fleet begin to collapse, they gave a single command: advance. The invisible weapons intensified. What had been careful strikes turned into relentless destruction. Now the humans were not just defending, they were attacking, tearing the enemy apart without hesitation. The aliens could not comprehend it. In 12 minutes of battle, they were losing everything they had built in 100 years. Their war songs, their dreams of glory, their promises of victory, all of it was being crushed. Soldiers cried out, their voices filled with disbelief. How could this be happening? How could humans, the species mocked for their chaos and fragility, have built weapons powerful enough to erase entire fleets in silence? The commanders realized too late that they had made a mistake not in strategy, but in judgment. They had underestimated the one thing that made humanity different. Humans never stopped adapting. Every defeat in their history had become a lesson. Every war had been training. Every failure had built a strength that no one else understood. Now that strength was unleashed. The alien fleet had come to Earth expecting conquest. Instead, they had stepped into a trap so perfect that it felt like destiny. Ships continued to vanish. Screams echoed across the channels, and the silence of Earth remained unbroken. Not a single human message, not a single word of mercy or threat, only action. Only destruction. The aliens had wanted a war. Were living through the nightmare they had created. By the 9th minute of battle, the fleet had lost more than half its strength. The commanders finally admitted the truth. Humanity was not fighting with fleets and soldiers. Humanity was fighting with a weapon the galaxy had never seen. A hidden weapon designed not to win battles, but to end wars before they began. It was no longer a question of whether they could defeat humans. It was a question of whether they could survive long enough to escape. And deep inside, every alien soldier already knew the answer. They would not escape. The war was already lost. The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes, but to the alien soldiers, it already felt like an eternity. The sky above Earth was filled with broken wreckage drifting in silence. The remains of ships that were supposed to be untouchable. The Armada, that had taken a century to build, was being torn apart faster than anyone could believe. The proud warriors who had sung songs of victory only hours before now screamed in fear as invisible weapons cut through their fleets like blades through paper. No one could see the enemy, no one could fight back. They had trained 100 years for this war, yet in less than 10 minutes, their will to fight was breaking inside one carrier. Soldiers clutched their weapons, though they knew they would never use them. The alarms blared, red lights flashing as the ship shook from nearby explosions. The officers shouted orders, but the soldiers no longer listened. They were staring at the windows, watching their fleet collapse, watching friends vanish in bursts of fire and light. Some dropped to their knees, muttering prayers in languages long forgotten by the galaxy. Others cursed their leaders for ever starting this war. Fear spread like a disease, and once it took root, it could not be removed on the command bridge. Of another flagship, the generals tried to project confidence. Their voices echoed through the channels, telling soldiers to hold the line, to remember their training. But the soldiers were no longer listening. The voices of their leaders sounded, thin and weak compared to the thunder of explosions outside. Discipline shattered. Ships broke formation, fleeing in different directions. Some fired wildly into empty space, wasting ammunition on shadows. The fleet was not fighting a war anymore, was dying in chaos. The worst part for the aliens was the silence of humanity. Not a single demand, not a single message, not even a mocking laugh. The humans had not spoken since the war began. They only attacked with cold precision. The silence was terrifying. The aliens would have preferred screams, taunts, threats, anything that would feel like a war between enemies. But this silence was worse. It felt like extermination, like they were insects being erased by a force that did not even need to explain itself by the 8th minute. The fleet had lost its heart. Ships that once carried thousands of soldiers were now burning husks. Commanders who had promised glory were dead or vanished without a trace. The soldiers realized something they had never imagined. The humans had not even deployed their ground armies. They had not landed troops or fired missiles at cities. They were fighting only with hidden weapons from the shadows. Even so, the greatest fleet the galaxy had ever gathered was being destroyed faster than anyone thought possible. The aliens wondered what would happen if humanity actually unleashed its full power. The thought alone was enough to break their courage completely in one desperate move. A cluster of alien cruisers attempted a direct assault on Earth's surface. Their plan was reckless. They could land troops and cause chaos among civilians. Perhaps the humans would be forced to reveal themselves. Perhaps they could turn the tide with terror. Cruisers charged forward, engines burning bright as they dove toward the blue planet. For a moment the soldiers inside cheered, believing they might finally strike back. But their hope lasted only seconds. The cruisers vanished one by one, torn apart by invisible fire before they ever reached the atmosphere. The soldiers who watched from orbit fell silent. If Earth could defend itself with such precision without lifting a single visible ship, then there was no way to fight. Every move led only to death. Panic turned into despair. Soldiers abandoned their posts. Pilots refused to follow orders. Ships even surrendered without being asked, shutting down weapons and broadcasting signals of surrender into the void. But there was no reply. The humans did not acknowledge them. The surrender signals vanished into silence, unanswered. That silence was worse than destruction. It meant mercy did not exist here. It meant surrender was meaningless. The soldiers began to feel that they were already dead, just waiting for their turn. The galaxy had expected a grand war, a clash that would be remembered for generations. Instead, what was unfolding was slaughter. And in the middle of it, the aliens began to understand the truth. Their leaders had told them stories of human weakness, but the humans were never weak. They were waiting. Every year, the aliens trained, humans watched. Every ship they've built, humans prepared a way to destroy it. Every plan they made, humans were already ahead. The aliens had not walked into a war. It walked into a trap set decades ago. And now, the jaws of that trap were closing by. 10th minute of the battle, more than 2/3 of the fleet was gone. Survivors floated helplessly, weapons drained, hearts broken. Some tried to send last messages to their families across the stars, though they knew the signals would never escape the storm of interference surrounding Earth. Others sat in silence, staring at the darkness that seemed to eat their fleet alive. They had dreamed of victory, but now all they could think of was survival. And deep inside, every soldier knew there would be no survival. Humanity had made its decision. The war would not last an hour. It would not even last half of one. It would end before the galaxy even realized it had begun on the ground. The human commanders watched the alien fleet break apart. They saw the chaos, the fear, the collapse of will. They said nothing. They only gave the next command: finish it. And when the 11th minute came, the real destruction began. The 11th minute of the battle arrived, and by then the alien fleet no longer looked like an army. What had once been a wall of steel stretching across Earth's orbit was now a field of wreckage, fire, and drifting corpses. Broken hulls spun silently, engines flickered weakly, and soldiers inside prayed for a miracle that would never come. The commanders tried to give orders, but their voices shook with fear. Many ships ignored them. The Grand Armada that had trained for a century was shattered, its will destroyed before the fight had even reached its peak. And yet humanity had still not spoken. Not a word, not a warning, not a demand. Only silence. It was as if the humans considered their enemy too unworthy to speak to. At that moment, Earth revealed its final weapon. The alien survivors did not see ships appear or fleets emerge from hiding. Instead, they saw light. A strange shimmering wave spread across the void, too vast to understand. It passed over the wreckage, over the broken ships, over the survivors, who still clung to hope. And every alien who saw it realized the truth. This was no ordinary weapon. This was something beyond war. A force designed not to fight battles, but to erase them entirely. The first ship touched by the wave simply vanished. It's not destroyed, not burned, not broken, gone. No wreckage, no explosion, nothing left behind. Just emptiness. Where a warship had been seconds earlier, panic became terror. The aliens screamed across their channels, begging their leaders to explain what was happening. The leaders had no answers. Generals who had promised victory could only stare in silence as their fleets disappeared in front of their eyes. Soldiers begged for orders, for commands, for anything to do. But what order could be given against a weapon that erased existence itself? Every strategy, every plan, every tactic meant nothing. The only thing left was fear, and that fear spread faster than the light that consumed them on the ground in the hidden command centers of Earth. Human officers gave simple orders. Each word was calm, without emotion. Fire here, erase there, advance the wave. They did not celebrate, they did not cheer, they did not gloat. Humanity had learned too much pain across its own history to treat extermination as glory. To the humans, this was not victory, it was necessity. They would not allow any enemy to think Earth could be broken. The aliens had chosen this war, and now they would pay the price. 12 minutes was all it would take. By the 12th minute, the fleet was gone. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, a century of training, erased in silence. The survivors who tried to flee were caught by invisible hunters and swallowed by the wave. Escape was impossible. The galaxy's greatest armada had entered Earth's orbit, full of confidence and arrogance, and 12 minutes later, nothing remained. The soldiers who had laughed at humans, the commanders who had sworn to erase Earth, the leaders who believed in destiny, all of them were gone. In their place, only drifting ash and empty space remained. The silence after the destruction was heavier than the battle itself. The alien channels that had once echoed with shouts and screams were now dead. The void was quiet, as if the galaxy itself held its breath. Humanity had not only defended itself, it had ended a war before it had even begun. No other species in history had ever crushed an enemy so completely, so quickly. For 100 years, the aliens had trained to fight humans. And in 12 minutes, humanity had proven that no training, no preparation, no numbers could save them, but not everyone was gone. A few ships had survived, crippled and broken, floating at the edges of the battlefield. Their weapons were useless, their engines failing. The humans did not destroy them. Instead, they let them drift, not out of mercy, but out of calculation. Those survivors would crawl back to their homeworlds. They would carry the story of what had happened above Earth. They would tell their people of the silence, the invisible weapons, the light that erased entire fleets. They would speak of how 100 years of preparation was crushed in 12 minutes. And through their broken voices, the galaxy would learn the truth. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was the predator. The surviving aliens did not understand why. They were allowed to live. Some believed it was mercy, others believed it was cruelty, but the humans had made their choice. They needed the story to spread. They needed the galaxy to know what happened when someone tried to invade Earth, and they knew that fear would travel farther than wreckage. Fear would last longer than destruction. Fear would remind the galaxy every single day that humanity was not to be challenged back on Earth. The world returned to silence. The skies cleared. The civilians continued with their lives as if nothing had happened. To them, the battle above was only a shadow, gone as quickly as it came. The human commanders shut down their hidden weapons, sealed their systems, and returned to waiting. They had revealed their strength only because they had to. And now they returned to silence, the same silence that had destroyed the fleet. Because silence was humanity's greatest weapon. It hid their plans, their strength, and their patience. And when the galaxy forgot this battle, as it eventually would, humanity would still be waiting. The 12th minute became legend. Cross. The stars' whispers spread of the day. The greatest fleet in history fell without landing a single blow. Some species trembled in fear, vowing never to challenge Earth. Others grew jealous, plotting in secret, dreaming of revenge. But deep inside, every race knew the truth. If humanity could crush a century of training in 12 minutes, then no enemy would ever be safe. And the lesson burned itself into the memory of the galaxy. Never test Earth unless you wish to vanish into silence. The galaxy was not the same after the 12 minutes. News traveled faster than light across trade routes and communication relays. Survivors returned in broken ships, their hulls scorched, their weapons stripped, their voices trembling as they told the story again and again. Entire fleets had vanished, millions of soldiers erased, 100 years of training wasted. The greatest armada in history crushed in less than the time it took for a child's meal. Every world listened, and every world fell silent. Even those who had hated humanity most did not laugh anymore. Fear replaced arrogance. Respect replaced mockery. The story of Earth's 12 minutes became the most whispered tale in the stars and council halls across the galaxy. Leaders argued in private. Some demanded revenge. They spoke of building new weapons, new fleets, stronger than before. But their voices shook. They had seen the terror in the survivors' eyes. They had heard the silence of Earth, a silence that meant the humans had not even spoken, had not even tried to negotiate, had not even warned. It was not war. It was judgment. Other leaders argued for peace, for distance, for silence of their own. They begged their people not to challenge humanity again, not to make the same mistake. Because deep inside they all knew if humanity could crush one fleet in 12 minutes, it could crush another just as easily for the common people of alien worlds. The story spread like a plague. Parents warned their children not to speak ill of Earth. Soldiers whispered about what it would feel like to face humans. Merchants who once mocked Earth's technology now looked at human goods with quiet respect. And across every star system, a simple truth took hold. Humanity had changed. Its place in the galaxy. They were no longer seen as upstarts, no longer seen as fragile newcomers. They were something far older, far more dangerous. They were the species that turned silence into a weapon on Earth. The people returned to normal life. Cities glowed at night, markets were filled, families laughed, children played. But beneath the surface, humanity's leaders met in secret. They knew the galaxy was watching. They knew fear was spreading, and they knew fear could be just as dangerous as war. Some leaders argued they should show mercy, reach out to the galaxy, prove that humanity was not a monster. Others disagreed. They believed mercy was weakness. They believed the galaxy should remain afraid, because only fear would protect Earth from another invasion. The arguments lasted long into the night, but in the end, they chose silence once again. They would not announce their victory. They would not boast. They would not send warnings or threats. They would wait, as they always had. Waiting was what humans did best for the survivors of the alien armada. Waiting was no comfort. They were haunted by what they had seen. They dreamed of the 12th minute, of ships vanishing without sound, of light that erased everything it touched. They spoke of it with broken voices, but no one doubted their words. Their fear was too real, their eyes too hollow. In time, some of them would become leaders of their own worlds, and they carried that fear into their decisions. When the idea of attacking Earth returned, they shook their heads and refused. They remembered what it felt like to watch a century of preparation burn away in minutes. They remembered the silence. The lesson spread deeper than fear. Some species began to study humanity more closely. They watched old human wars, read old human stories, and tried to understand what made this species different. They discovered a history of endless struggle, of countless defeats followed by greater victories. They discovered that humans adapted. Faster than any other race, they discovered that pain did not break them, it sharpened them. And most terrifying of all, they discovered that humans did not fight for glory, or conquest, or dominance. They fought to survive. And a species that fights only to survive cannot be broken. That was the true lesson of the 12 minutes generations later. The story was still told. In alien academies, new recruits studied the Battle of Earth not as a victory, but as a warning. Teachers repeated the tale of the 100-year training that ended in 12 minutes of destruction. They told their students to never underestimate humans, to never believe them weak, to never mistake their silence for fear. The lesson was simple and unforgettable. Humanity was not to be tested. Humanity was not to be challenged. Humanity was to be left alone, or respected or feared. The galaxy did not need another 12 minutes on Earth itself. People moved on, but the memory lingered. Those who commanded the hidden weapons remembered the destruction. They remembered the silence they kept while entire fleets vanished. Carried guilt. Others carried pride. But all carried the same promise. If it ever happened again, if anyone ever tried to crush Earth once more, they would be ready. They would wait in silence. And when the time came, they would strike again. Because that was what humanity had become. The galaxy's final warning, and so the war that had been planned for 100 years became the shortest war in history. War that began with silence and ended with silence. A war that lasted 12 minutes. A war that taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget, that Earth was not fragile. Earth was not weak. Earth was not prey. Earth was the predator that waited in the dark, and when the dark finally moved, there would be nothing left.